loved one. It's one thing to care for a stranger. Okay, not saying that we're going to be any different, but it's one thing to care for a stranger. It's a whole different ballpark when you're caring for a loved one, because of the relationship. Caring for a loved one can bring up resentments, perhaps in the past. It can bring up anger. It can bring up frustration, and it can bring up guilt and a resentment, perhaps about how your loved one maybe didn't plan properly for old age. Resentments about why they didn't set up a power of attorney or put in certain medical directives, and anger that in some way your life is put on hold in some respects, frustrated with the responsibilities you have to manage, and guilty for even having the resentments for being angry and frustrated. It's a tall order. So how do we live with the guilt? How do we live with the guilt? Being a caregiver, like we said, can take its toll on you, and so can the guilt that comes with it. I would say that almost every situation can stir up guilt within. As a caregiver, you may start to question every decision you make about what's best for your loved one versus what's easier. You can feel guilty about getting frustrated with them. Trust me. Satan sometimes has a he beats up on me quite. He'll beat up on you when you've gotten frustrated with someone who is has a limited capacity. So that guilt can carry over. You can feel guilty about getting frustrated with them when you know full well that they can't help it, or they can't do anything about it. And yet caregiving is necessary, it's selfless, and it's difficult. It can be hard for caregivers even to admit that they're having a tough time managing the guilt and the stress. Some of the types of caregiver stress they can include guilt about doing wrong by the care recipient. Sometimes the sheer stress of being a caregiver will weigh on your patience, and you replay certain incidents in your mind. Number two, guilt about the fact that you got chatter going on in your mind that you're thinking you are not rising to the occasion as a caregiver. Caregivers balance multiple roles. Their spouses, they got to balance that with being parents. They got to balance that with being employees, because we all got to work at some time. And although your work and your family and your other day-to-day issues, they may pale in comparison to life or death issues that are associated with caregiving. This can leave caregivers wondering whether they're making their loved one in need of care enough of a priority. You can have guilt about self-care, taking care of yourself. When caregiving is at the forefront of your life, self-care can take a backseat. That's when people start to neglect their own health. They struggle with stress management, and letting go of social activities go to the wayside can all play into feelings of guilt. Guilt about neglecting other relatives. Being a caregiver can take most of your time. It can take a lot of your treasure. It can take a lot of your talent, and sometimes at the expense of other family members. Caregivers can feel stretched thin and find themselves missing out on time with their spouse or their children and others that they feel that are important to them, which can make a caregiver feel guilty. I encourage everybody, it is at these times where we need to remember that loving ourselves is loving them. And one way to do that, I believe, is to set our intention to love. I think that I can't see that last quote I have. There it is. Caregiving can be heaven or hell. You have to decide. Oh, wait a minute. Did I go back? Let me go back. Oh, I'm sorry, everybody. Okay. Yeah, intention to love. I'm sorry, everybody. I got the pastor looking at me so intently. Oh, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Intention to love, intention to love. What this is setting your intention to love them unconditionally. What that will do will result in an internal shift and transformation, because as I said, it's not about them. A lot of it is about us. Intention to love will require you to let go of expectations and resentments. It will require you to go deep within and examine your own emotions. It will require you to accept your own trigger point. It will require you to forgive yourself. And it will require you to realize that you must love yourself unconditionally. Being a caregiver means giving yourself care as well as your loved one. So I encourage everybody to remember that no matter the condition, whether it's mentally or physically, everybody remembers and feels what it's like to be loved. Sending your loved one on the next part of their journey, forgiven and loved unconditionally, is, I believe, the greatest gift we can give to them and ourselves. So make sure we set the intention to love, that the caregiver experience will transform you rather than break you.
Chaplain Grace,
Yes, sir.
before you go to the next slide, I want to make sure everyone is aware that we will have opportunity to share in questions and things of that nature
Yes, sir.
after the presentation. So in the event that you have a question or something of that nature, you can put it in the chat, write it down, because I don't want you to forget it, because I know that it's an extremely important question. But I just wanted to throw that in so that everybody can be aware of that.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. You're doing an excellent job.
Oh, thank you, sir. Yes, everybody. Definitely will have questions, and if anybody has a experience that they want to share, we were going to ask that later. But thank you, Pastor. As a caregiver, we want to make sure that you are staying strong. And the way to do that is because many caregivers will push the guilt management strategies aside, feeling they should be able to, because I'm a Christian, because I'm supposed to do this, then I'm supposed to be able to deal with the feelings of guilt. And sometimes they push that aside. And as a result, they really don't seek out help or support. Some family members who are ill, they expect their caregiver to be selfless, a selfless servant 24/7. It is extremely important for caregivers to remember that they need to prioritize their own care in order to be their best for the one that they're caring for. Experts say that as a caregiver, when you care for yourself, you increase and improve your own caring. A few helpful strategies to help caregivers prioritize self-care could be, am I on the right side? Am I on the right? Yes, I am. Name, that's where it says name and recognize the emotion of guilt. When I did some research, professionals agree that pushing guilt to the back burner can create issues that affect both the caregiver's quality of life and their ability to care for others. So ignoring the guilt can lead to problems with eating, they can lead to problems with sleeping, concentration, and result in unhealthy methods of coping with the stress of being a caregiver, such as abuse, substance abuse. So one thing you can do is journal. You can always talk to a trusted friend or seek help from a therapist about the emotions that surround being a caregiver can all be positive steps toward managing the guilt that you may have. Another thing that you might want to do in staying strong is to carve out some self-care time. Many caregivers, they don't just push the self-care to the back burner, they take it off the stove altogether. And I think it is clear from this training that caregivers must take time for self-care in order to thrive in their helping role. Another thing you can do is work toward understanding and forgiveness. As humans, we do the best we can with what we have. Guilt over breaking a promise made to a loved one, or guilt over speaking in a harsh tone during a difficult moment, can be tough to overcome. Self-forgiveness is the key to moving forward, because when it's all said and done, I'm sure we can all agree that it was not intentional. So remember that the reverse is true as well. Caregivers may also need to forgive the person they care for due to past wrongs. The significance of forgiveness at the end of life is crucial to healing both caregiver and the loved one alike. It can bring healing to the person who is doing the forgiving and to the person who is being forgiven. So I encourage everybody uh, to get support, because no one is an island. Support groups can help you to learn from other caregivers on how to manage some of the types of issues or stress that you may face. The day-to-day tasks of caregiving can feel more manageable when caregivers realize that they are not alone. And another thing we need to remember that it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be angry. We have seen how caregiving, it really can be a very complex journey that brings a flood of emotions from gratitude, frustration, compassion, sadness, guilt, resentment, and anger. Whether we get angry at the illness, get angry at the role, our role is not being acknowledged, or get angry when we don't have support from other family members because they didn't step up to the plate, get angry when caregiving requires us to actually rearrange our lives, or get angry and feel resentful because our lives, sometimes it feels like it has been hijacked. Caregivers can find themselves dealing with all of that, all the while simultaneously coping with their own personal grief over the loss of a person that they cared for. Just thinking about this, you would think that you have some compassion for someone in the caregiving role. In order to survive the caregiving journey, you will have to make peace with it all. And here are some things that you can use to make peace with it. You got to admit when you are feeling angry. It's normal and natural to feel angry. We're human, and no one can balance all the dimensions of life seamlessly. Number two, you got to engage in self-compassion. And self-compassion has three components to it. One is mindfulness. Mindfulness is about focus. When anger arises, we need to pay attention to the task at hand, even though it may be unpleasant. For instance, if you have some mental chatter going on saying, I hate doing this, or why can't I get some help, or this is awful, I don't want to do this every morning. We have to shift our attention to the moment by moment experiences or tasks at hand. So if you come into the house, just say, okay, moment by moment. Now I'm going to put this down. I'm going to put my keys right here. Now I'm going to go into the kitchen. Now I'm going to do moment by moment. Stay in the present. And that will keep your mind focused. Be mindful of what you're doing at that moment. It helps you to calm down. It relaxes your brain. Like it's almost like unclenching your fist. It does help you to calm down. Another one is recognize common humanity, is remembering that you are not alone. Suffering is a part of everyone's life. It just looks different for each of us. We all struggle. So I would encourage you to make index cards that says things like other people feel this way, or I am not alone, and put them on your refrigerator, on your mirror, so you won't forget. And when you feel angry, this is what sometimes I practice. I close my eyes. I put both of my hands on my heart, and I'll say, my hands on my heart is like a physical acknowledgement, physically remembering that I am not alone. There's a common humanity. I am not alone. There are other people going through this. I am not alone. Uh, Another one is practice kindness. Practice kindness. I would encourage you to ask yourself, what are some words of kindness that you may need to hear? What would you say to a friend that who may be experiencing the same thing? Would you say, "Oh my God, I understand. That's understandable. I understand why you feel angry because that is a lot of what you're going through." And I would encourage you to say that to yourself. Practice kindness to yourself. And the last thing is take a self-compassion break often on a daily basis. It doesn't take a lot of time, but it will allow you to keep your heart open and help you to nurture and care for yourself, which in turn will care for others. These next few slides, I'm going to turn it over to my counterpart, Reverend Robin Walker.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. One of the things I want to say is there are many ways that we are caregivers. We're caregivers if our parents are aged. We're caregivers if we're in church and we're sitting next to someone that is senior to us. We're caregivers because we care for each other. In our profession as chaplains, of course, we're caregivers in every aspect, but most importantly, the spiritual aspect. What I'd like you to do at this time is to put in the chat, can you recall any incident where someone said something that made you uncomfortable? I want you to put that in the chat so I can see it. But one of the things that I want to talk to you about is communication. Often we can heal people with just communicating with each other, and some things that we shouldn't say. And then we're going to talk about some golden rules of things that we should say, right? So some of the things that I think would be helpful, and it was outlined in this document that we're going to send you, it talks about reframing from commenting on how tired someone looks. You know, when you look at someone and you say, oh, you look tired, you know, we might want to refrain from that, because what happens if I call myself dressing up and coming into church and, you know, I'm doing the best that I can, getting my loved one ready, getting myself ready, and then someone says, oh, you look so tired. Sometimes that can be defeating, right? Then I want you to avoid saying, God doesn't give you more than you can bear. Because sometimes that is, we know that to be theologically true, but that's not be how I'm feeling. I'm feeling overwhelmed. My hair is all over my head. My husband's working on my last bad nerve. My children, my adult children who should be grown is not grown. And I need somebody just to put the trash out, right? And I'm saying, God, where are you? Did we forget that the Lord said on the cross, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, why hast thou forsaken me? That why is a prayer according to Psalms. We're looking for God to answer. So we don't want to do that to someone else, right? Then there's another one. Don't ask a person what you or the church can do to support them. This is the time that we should come together and figure out what we can do in our sphere of influence, right? There's certain things that I'm good at. You know, they tell me I make a pretty mean rice pudding, right? So I might want to drop by and say, do you like rice pudding? I made some at home. I just want to give that to you, right? You might decide that there's a gift card that you might want to give somebody without anybody knowing. There's small things that we can do. We don't have to ask what a person actually needs if it's in our heart to give, right? Don't say that their situation is for the best, because at least your loved one is at home with you, right? Because is it really the best when my loved one is sundowning and screaming at night, and I have children that have to go to school, and I haven't figured out how to handle that? It would be better to listen, to find out what that person needs and give a resource, right? Don't interrupt them while they're trying to get their thought across. They might be all over in their head thinking many thoughts at a time, and it may take time to really express how they're feeling because they don't have the ability to say how they're feeling. Avoid saying there is a blessing somewhere. Let God reveal the blessing. All right, last time I checked, that's how God does. He reveals the blessing over time and space, right? Don't say, I don't know how you do it. I know you don't know how I do it because you're not me, right? Don't say, this won't last forever. Because what's the alternative if this doesn't last forever? I might not be ready to say goodbye to my loved one. I may not even know how to say goodbye. I might want to have forgiveness to show them that I can do this because I do love you, right? 9, I said it again. Don't say this won't last forever. Because ever, when we say forever, things last in our minds and our hearts that we can't shake. So we don't want to say that, right? Don't share your caregiving stories or experience with them because your experience may not be my experience. One of the things we do know scientifically that everybody doesn't respond the same way as they age. So your story and experience may be different to what I'm experiencing. My loved one could be combative, and I've never seen my loved one as this person aged be combative because they're often very sweet. When I was coming up, very loving and protective, right? Another thing is my daddy is, I'm a daddy's girl. I was a daddy's girl. My daddy was he was my rock. But as he lived with chronic illness, right, he became weak. So therefore, I had to be strong when he became weak. And it was hard for me to see. It was hard for my sons to see. So we want to recognize my story. What pains me may not pain you. So here's what you can do. Let's go to the next slide. Let's reconfigure hope a little bit, okay? What I'm asking you to do if you have a caregiver, I want you to focus on the importance of what they are doing for their loved ones by taking the focus off of the physical care or the person's physical inability. Now, one of the things that we don't talk about at church, do you know 60% of the congregation is living with chronic illness of some sort? And we don't talk about it. We just manage it. So in a sense, we're all at one point, whether we're caregivers to ourselves or to our loved ones, we need to be kind to each other and to ourselves, right? So sometimes we want to take the focus off of the physical aspect, right? And send us a personal gift. You might want to send a message of hope. One of the things that I'm very aware of, and I still have it, and I wish I had one tonight to show you. They have these prayer cubes that one's forgiveness. They have one and then 6 prayers on it. And I was given that as a gift when my dad died, and I still have it. So I start buying them for patients. You know what I mean? There are little things that we can do that really changes our heart and mind. And in scripture, did you know the heart and the mind sometimes are in the Hebrew is the same? So sometimes what's in here and what's in here, way I'm feeling, they go together. I wanted to say that. So, and the other thing that we can do, did you know we can give a gift of self-care? One of the things that I love to do with my mother, she lives in Philadelphia. Now, she drives me crazy, y'all. I want you to know she's 84. She drives me crazy because she's still driving, and she's the stuff. So we sit down at 2 o'clock, and we have tea time at 2 once a month, and we do it virtually because she's in Pennsylvania and I'm here. And so we have our favorite tea. But for her, that's a gift to say, and something to look forward to. So think about the person that's the caregiver, that's your friend, that you can do something different with. And one of the other things that I will suggest, if you're a writer, you can write a note. Now that I know everybody wants to text, but it is nothing like getting a card from Helen Steiner Wright, because she just writes so eloquently. And you know what's so important about that? It's something tangible that you've given to somebody. So when they're really down, they can read those words, and maybe, just maybe, they can reconfigure hope at that moment. Of course, the church, I'm always an advocate for this, especially these people, women's ministry or deaconess or some of the stewards, or I don't know the configuration of your church because we are many religions, but this is where I'm always telling as a Seventh-day Adventist pastor, one of the things I always told women's ministry is, let's clean someone's house that is elderly. Maybe a room like a kitchen or a bathroom, and let's make arrangements. We might want to go out and just, create a meal, a Sunday or Sabbath meal for that person so they don't have to think about what to eat and have something to look forward to. You know what? And if you can't cook, you have Red Lobster and Olive Garden, get something to go and say, here, I just thought about you. Piece of pie is good, apple pie with some ice cream, anything that will create a smile. That's what I need you to do, right? The other thing is short visits. We don't want to go and stay too long. You want to do short visits. Now, while you're there, you might say, let me grab that trash for you. I can take your trash cans out, right? I can vacuum up for you. Did you need help making a bed? Any of those kinds of things take the pressure off. Now, 5, 6, and 7, if you look at that, you see how I have that in yellow? I love this one. This is the one. Listening in silence is valuable, right? We all heard that, right? But this is the catch to that when a person is a caregiver. Sometimes it's golden to ask someone how they're doing and then listen. We don't do too well with silence, but that's what we need. Remember that each caregiver's experience is different and unique to their loved one's personality, right? And their emotions. So one of the things I want to say is I love this emotional wheel, and I'm going to spend some time with that. And I know we're going to go over, but I just want y'all to work with me a little bit. If the caregiver is experiencing anger or guilt, like Grace was talking about, you may find it helpful and suggest a grateful journal. Let me just say this to you. Now, this is my 20th year as a chaplain, but way back there, I was a chaplain on a unit. It was the intermediate unit, and it was the height of the pandemic where we had methadone clinics on each corner in Baltimore. I'm not going to say the hospital. And it was coming so quickly, the staff was becoming, having compassion fatigue in taking care of people, right? Because they had an authentic drug on the streets, and the young people were taking it and they were dying quickly. So I had to reconfigure hope for them by telling them, use this care journal. Before you leave, it was mandatory that we wrote down one thing each day that went well. And that's what I'm suggesting that we do for our caregivers. It's easy to focus on what goes wrong, but it's more important to say, this is what went well today, right? So think about a journal and have a plan for your loved one. Then lastly, consider capturing the loved one's story of the caregiver instead of sharing your own. Now, research shows that this is so important, and this is where the church can really offer this. You know how you have your Grace was talking about her dad, and I understand he was a member of Turner for many years, and her mother, right? And Grace, I noticed I saw a picture of them dancing. Is that them? So isn't that a wonderful picture that the church collects pictures and you all write a little caption at the bottom and the church get together and show the pictures and bring the loved ones so that they can see it, that you're caring for, because they have their long-term memory. The issue is their short-term memory is not there, but their long-term memory is intact. So when they see the pictures, they can be a part of the congregation at that moment. Oh, Lord, I'm getting ready to start preaching. Okay, Pastor, please go to the next slide, Grace.
Okay, I'm gonna ask Pastor, uh, because we have about 8 minutes.
Oh,
And although, and I think, forgive me, I think I ran on too long. Y'all see how phenomenal Reverend Walker is, Lord Jesus. And what I'm going to ask Pastor is, if there are some questions or anything, you tell me what you want, Pastor. If you want to open the floor, what I can do is make these slides available to everyone. This is the emotion
Let-
wheel that
let-
she wanted to.
Colonel,
Hmm? Yeah,
let me ask, how many more slides do you have? Or how many?
there there are a total of let's see. There's a lot, not a lot,
Okay,
but at least till it's 14, about 14 slides.
so let's
And
do this.
we
Let's do
hmm?
this. I'm sorry, let's do, if you can stop sharing your screen.
Yeah, how I do that. Okay. Stop. How I do that. Okay. How do I